Hello, assalamu alaikum, dear viewers. I'm Abdul Momen. Again, would like to discuss the rest of the part of the famous play of William Shakespeare, uh, namely Macbeth. This is the second part two, Macbeth by William Shakespeare. So, dear viewers, so let's start. So let's start to talk about the characterization of the play. You know that Duncan is one of the major characters in this play. Duncan, who is Duncan, or who was Duncan? Duncan was the king of Scotland and a fatherly king, was old in that time, a kindly and trusting older man. Duncan's unsuspecting nature leaves him open to Macbeth's betrayal. Both before and after the regicide, it is Duncan's particularly virtuous nature that enhances Macbeth's sense of guilt. The historic Duncan, incidentally, was a young man when he was betrayed. When he was betrayed by his general, namely, you know that Macbeth. So, if we talk about Malcolm and Donalbain, Duncan's two princes or two sons, although Malcolm and Donalbain seem to have inherited Duncan's fairness, both display a cunning that far surpasses their father. After Duncan's death, they fear for their lives rightly and both flee Scotland. Malcolm also tests Macduff's loyalty whilst abroad by putting on dishonorable and corrupt airs. Such cunning or shrewdness allows their successful return to the crown of Scotland. You know that Macbeth, Thane of Glamis, Macbeth is a general. Macbeth is a general in the king's army. We have discussed it in our previous class. And originally the Thane of Glamis, as a reward for his valiant fighting described in the opening scene, Macbeth is also named the Thane of Cawdor. Appropriately, the former Thane of Cawdor was a traitor to the crown who appeared loyal. At heart, Macbeth does not deserve the adjective evil. To be sure, he commits regicide and eventually orders the death of women and children alike. But unlike Iago of Othello or Edmund of King Lear, Macbeth is not an explicitly malicious villain. His initial crime is a product of opportunistic prophecies, a weakness of character, his vaulting ambition, and certainly the influence of Lady Macbeth thereafter. He is compelled to commit further crimes in an attempt to cover his tracks and defy the three witches' prophecy. After Duncan's death and the flight of Malcolm and Donalbain, Macbeth reigns as King of Scotland until his death. So, if we talk about Lady Macbeth, Macbeth's wife, is like a witch, like the three witches in this play. She acts acts for witch. Many critics say that. What Macbeth lacks in decisiveness, Lady Macbeth makes up for in bloodthirsty lust for power and wealth, swearing off her femininity at the beginning of the play. Lady Macbeth manipulates her husband powerfully to follow through with his plans to kill Duncan. As I have shown you the video in my previous class, that how Lady Macbeth instincted Macbeth to kill the fatherly king of Scotland. So Lady Macbeth played a vital role in the life of Macbeth in case of killing, that heinous killing. Okay, so Lady Macbeth has much influence on the life of Macbeth. So, what should I say? Lady Macbeth, after the act of regicide, it is Lady Macbeth who has the soundness of mind to plant the incriminating evidence on Duncan's guards. And yet, firmness disintegrates gradually as the play progresses, leading to nightmares that haunt her, ultimately drive her to suicide. In this regard, Lady Macbeth appears to switch characters with Macbeth midway through the play. although most famous for her cruelty and lines such as "unsex me here." The decline of Lady Macbeth is also of great interest and certainly a mysterious aspect of Macbeth. As you have been shown in previous class that Lady Macbeth is searching for something to, to wash her hand. And she clearly told that all the perfumes of Arabia will not sweeten my this little hand. So this is his mental disposition, her mental disposition in that time. So her soul has been cursed. So you know that about Seyton. Seyton is the Macbeth's loyal servant, and three murderers hired by Macbeth to kill Banquo, fleeing Lady Macduff, and Macduff's son. Since only two murderers are explicitly hired by Macbeth, commentators speculate on the identity of the third murderer. A popular candidate is Macbeth himself. A porter in Macbeth's service, you know that this character, a porter, provides comic relief with his account of hell portering. Banquo, Thainop, what should I say? Lochaber, a general in Duncan's army. Banquo was the general of Duncan's army. Along with Macbeth, Banquo is also the subject of one of the witches' prophecies. Unlike Macbeth, however, Banquo does not act to fulfill these prophecies. He instead relies on his better judgment and morals. Okay, so that is the important point, that Banquo does not go or didn't go with the same pace with Macbeth. He had a mind to think what is good, what is bad. That's why he is quite different. He's quite different from Macbeth. Okay, so he instead relies on his better judgment and morals. And true to the witches' words, his son Pliance escapes Macbeth's murderers to become a future king. Banquo is also important in that his ghost returns to haunt Macbeth, thus instilling a strong sense of uneasiness among Macbeth's servants. Pliance, you know that Banquo's son Pliance, he alone escapes from the ambitions set by Macbeth for him and his father. Macduff, Thane of Fife, a Scottish nobleman, Macduff, who questions Macbeth's tyrannical rule and refuses to recognize him as king. Macduff follows Malcolm to England, where he demonstrates his true faithfulness to Scotland. When the English army marches on Dunsinane, it is Macduff who slays Macbeth in a duel. For even though Macbeth is said to be invincible against any man born of a woman, Macduff was born by the equivalent of a Caesarean section. So it is the destiny destined for Macbeth. Lady Macduff and Macduff's wife, you know that a king and motherly foil for Lady Macbeth's lack of feminine sympathies. She is killed along with her children after Macduff flees Scotland. So Macduff's son, the preconsciousness of Macduff's son makes his death ever the more lamentable. And you know that the another characters, Lennox, Rose. Rose is Macbeth's cousin, and Lennox, a Scottish noble who gradually questions Macbeth's tyrannical rule and angers Menteith and Caithness Seward, Earl of Northumberland, a young Seward, Hecate, queen of the witches. Hecate is some critics believe that her character was added to the play by a later playwright. Three witches, the weird sisters, you know, that the witches who have much importance and who have much impacts on the changing life of Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. And only for believing these three witches and their apparitions, Macbeth was victimized with the situation, with his fate. The witches foresee Macbeth's ascent to power and his defeat, as well as the succession of Banquo's line. So, apparently without any real motive, their speech is full of paradox and equivocation. Although the witches do not have much character per se, they are in many ways central to the plot and themes of the play. For preliminary analysis, see that Act 1, if you see Scene 1. So three messengers Three servants, a lord, a soldier, a captain in Duncan's army, an old man, an English doctor, and a Scottish doctor, and a Scottish gentleman. So many characters are involved in this play. So we need not to talk about the minor characters, and we have to talk about now the Macbeth's summarize. If we want to summarize Macbeth, we have to go through this summarization or through this analysis that three witches tell the Scottish general Macbeth that he will be king of Scotland. Encouraged by his wife, Macbeth kills the king, becomes the new king, and kills more people out of paranoia. Civil war erupts to overthrow Macbeth, resulting in more death. Okay, so this is the very minimized summary. Three witches and Macbeth and his tragic life. So if we go through Act 1, so I want to summarize act by act. So if we think or go through Act 1, on a bleak Scottish moorland, Macbeth and Banquo, two of King Duncan's generals, dear generals of Duncan, discover three strange women. Three strange women means three witches. The witches prophecy that Macbeth will be promoted twice to Thane of Cawdor, a rank of the aristocracy. It is also called the rank of aristocracy, bestowed by grateful kings and King of Scotland. Banquo's descendants will be kings, but Banquo isn't promised any kingdom himself. The generals want to hear more, but the weird sisters disappear suddenly. So soon afterwards, King Duncan names Macbeth Thane of Cawdor as a reward for his success in the recent battles. The promotion seems to support the prophecy. The king then proposes to make a brief visit that night to Macbeth's castle in Burness. Okay, this is the name of the place. King then proposes to make a brief visit. Okay, so Lady Macbeth receives news from her husband that the prophecy and his new title. After knowing that from her husband, she vows to help him become king by whatever means are necessary. Okay, whatever means. In Act 2. Okay, in Act 2, Scene 1, we see that Macbeth returns to his castle, followed almost immediately by King Duncan. The Macbeths float together to kill Duncan and wait until everyone is asleep at the appointed time. Lady Macbeth gives the guards drugged wine so Macbeth can enter and kill the king very easily. He regrets this almost immediately, but his wife reassures him she leaves the bloody daggers by the dead king just before Macduff, a nobleman, you know that Macduff was a nobleman, arrives. Macduff আসার আগে. When Macduff discovers the murder, Macbeth kills the drunken guards in a show of rage and retribution. Duncan's sons, Malcolm and Donalbain, flee, fearing for their own lives, but they are nevertheless blamed for the murder. In Act 3, what happened? Macbeth becomes king of Scotland. Obviously, you know the incident and you know the plot, conspiracy against the king and kingdom and their family. So Macbeth becomes king of Scotland, but it is plagued by feelings of insecurity. He remembers the prophecy that Banquo's descendants will inherit the throne and arranges for Banquo okay. Where I left actually. Okay, so in the okay, so Act 3 তে কি হচ্ছে? What happened in Act 3? In Act 3 we see that Macbeth becomes king of Scotland, and but it is plagued by feelings of insecurity. মানে ম্যাকবেথ ক্ষমতা নিয়ে নিল, স্কটল্যান্ডের কিং হয়ে গেল, তারপরে he felt insecurity, সে ফেল্ট করছে মনে মনে, কারণ ওই যে কনস্পিরেসি করে ক্ষমতায় আসার পরে তার ভিতরে একটা ফেল্ট হচ্ছে। এটা একটা শিক্ষণীয় বিষয়, ইতিহাসেরও বিষয় বলা যায়। He remembers the prophecy, এবং সেই সাথে then he remembered at the same time he remembered the prophecy of the then prophecy made by that three weird sisters, three witches, that Banquo's descendants will inherit the throne, and arranges for Banquo and his son Fleance to be killed. In the darkness, Banquo is murdered, but his son escapes the assassins. At his stated banquet that night, Macbeth sees the ghost of Banquo and worries the courtiers with his murderous response. Lady Macbeth dismisses the court and unsuccessfully tries to calm her husband, costume for Vivian Lie as Lady Macbeth. Okay, in Act 4, Macbeth seeks out the witches who say that he will be safe until a local wood, Birna Mood. এইখানে একটা প্রফেসি করা হয়েছিল যে বিরনা মুডটা আস্তে আস্তে হেঁটে হেঁটে ডানসিনান পাহাড়ের উপরে আসবে। সো এইটা একটা ভবিষ্যৎবাণী করা ছিল। সো অ্যাক্ট 4-এ আমরা দেখছি যে ম্যাকবেথ সিক্স আউট দ্য উইচেসরা বলেছিল যেটা যে সে দ্যাট হি উইল বি সেফ আনটিল আ লোকাল উড, ততদিন পর্যন্ত তিনি সেফ থাকবেন যতদিন না একটা লোকাল উড মানে স্থানীয় একটি জঙ্গলের কথা বলা হচ্ছে। ওকে, যতদিন না লোকাল উড, সেই লোকাল উডটার নাম কি বেরনাম উড, মার্চেস ইনটু দ্য ব্যাটল এগেইনস্ট হিম। হি অলসো নিড নট ফিয়ার এনিওয়ান বর্ন অফ উমেন, এবং সেই সাথে কাউকে ভয় পাওয়ার তার কোনো কারণ নেই, কারণ স্বাভাবিক জন্ম নিয়ে কেউ তাকে মারতে পারবে না। এটা প্রফেসাইজড ছিল এই কথাটা। দ্যাট সাউন্ডস লাইক ইটস নো লুপ হোলস হিয়ার। They also prophesy that the Scottish succession will still come from Banquo's son. Macbeth embarks on a reign of terror, slaughtering many, including Macduff's family. আমরা জানি যে ম্যাকবেথ ক্ষমতার এই লোভ লালসার কারণে কত কি কুকর্ম করেছে। Macduff had gone to seek Malcolm, one of Duncan's son. আপনারা জানেন যে ডানকানস সান ছিল ম্যালকমকেও সে মারতে গিয়েছিল। Duncan's son who fled ultimately he was able to flee from Scotland. Okay, Malcolm at the court of the English king. Malcolm is young and unsure of himself, but Macduff, pained with grief, persuades him to lead an army against Macbeth. By the pricking of my thumbs, something wicked this way comes. Okay, in Act 5, if we go through the last act, Act 5, Macbeth feels safe in his remote castle at Dunsana until he is told that Birna Mood is moving towards him. Malcolm's army is carrying branches from the forest as camouflage for their assault on Macbeth's stronghold. Meanwhile, an overwrought and conscience-ridden Lady Macbeth walks in her sleep and tells her secrets to her doctor. She commits suicide. You know well that Lady Macbeth commits suicide. As the final battle commences, Macbeth hears of Lady Macbeth's suicide and mourns. Okay. In the midst of a losing battle, Macduff challenges Macbeth. Macbeth learns Macduff is the child of a Caesarean birth. Okay, so realizes he is doomed and submits to his enemy. Macduff thrones and brings the head of the traitor Macbeth to Malcolm. তার মাথাটা কেটে নিয়ে আসছিল। Malcolm declares peace and goes to Seyton to be enthroned, what should I say? Seyton to be crowned king tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. So this is the summary of the plot. If we think that if we can search for some answers for some questions, that how is the plot of Macbeth arranged? এই ম্যাকবেথের প্লটটা কিভাবে অ্যারেঞ্জ হয়েছিল? So you know that the plot is arranged just like in any play. The complication begins when Macbeth kills the king to secure the kingship. It immediately becomes clear that the only way to hide the murder is to keep murdering, and the body count begins to climb. So next question, so how does Macbeth begin? কিভাবে ম্যাকবেথ শুরু হয়? The play begins with the brief appearance of a trio of witches and then moves to a military camp, where the Scottish king Duncan hears the news that his generals Macbeth and Banquo have defeated two separate invading armies, one from Ireland led by the rebel MacDonald and one from Norway. So there are two characters are very important, Lady Macbeth and Macbeth. So we have to know about Lady Macbeth. How did Lady Macbeth die? If you think that how did Lady Macbeth die? Lady Macbeth is a leading character in William Shakespeare's tragedy, Macbeth. So the wife of the play's tragic hero, Macbeth, a Scottish nobleman, Lady Macbeth goes her husband into committing regicide, after which she becomes Queen of Scotland. She dies of stays in the last act, an afferent suicide. Okay, so already I have discussed the themes especially, you know that. Okay, so if you think that what are the three things the witches say to Macbeth? The three important things greet Macbeth as the Thane of Glamis, as he is, Thane of Cawdor, and King hereafter. They then promise Banquo that he will father kings, and they disappear. So if you think that is Macbeth is a tragic hero, yeah, Macbeth is the tragic hero of the play. Obviously, ambition is his fatal flaw. What is the tragic flaw or fatal flaw? Ambition. Tragic heroes start off nice, then a bad part of their personality uh, kicks in. I mean, fatal flaw to make them not so nice. Sometimes when you watch modern films, the filmmaker uses this idea of a tragic hero too. How many murders are there in Macbeth? Yeah, perhaps 5 people were murdered. Macbeth kills more than 5 people in the play, though it's not possible to determine exactly how many deaths he is responsible for. At the very least, he is responsible for the deaths of MacDonald, Duncan, the king's guards, Banquo, Lady Macduff and her family and household, and young Seward. Okay, what would be the main conflict of Macbeth? So obviously conflict within. Macbeth is initially an admirable war hero, but he is tempted by power and advancement and pushed by Lady Macbeth to hasten the fulfillment of the witch's prophecy. Macbeth struggles with the decision to murder for personal gain. Ambition motivates him to commit the unthinkable. Okay, what are the themes? So, if we think about the themes, already I have discussed this. So, again, I want to talk about the main themes. So, key themes, the most important themes are good versus evil, the dangers of ambition or high ambition, the influence of supernatural forces. I mean, the influence of three witches on the life of Macbeth, Lady Macbeth, what's that? So the contrast between appearance and reality, loyalty and guilty. So uh, this is the play, and uh, I have to conclude my speech here, saying goodbye and Allah Hafiz. Thank you.